There's a hierarchy in every room, even when you can't see it. The powerful aren't watching everyone. They're watching the few who stand out, and the many who disappear the moment they walk in. Not because they're quiet, not because they're humble, but because they carry habits that whisper one message louder than words: irrelevance. Machiavelli didn't write for the crowd. He wrote for rulers. The kind of people who understood that being visible isn't about being loud. It's about being felt. And when you carry these 13 habits, you don't just get ignored. You become invisible to power, to opportunity, to respect. It starts with the first habit. You enter rooms with your energy pointed inward. When a powerful person walks into a room, their awareness expands. They scan. They assess. They dominate silently. But when a weak person walks in, everything collapses inward. Their body shrinks, their eyes drop, their energy retreats, as if they're trying to hide from being seen. And to the powerful, that kind of person doesn't exist. They're not even worth evaluating. Because if you don't value your own presence, why should anyone else? Your posture, your movement, your stillness, these are your first weapons of influence. Disappear physically, and your enemies won't even need to destroy you. You've already erased yourself. When you enter a room, it's your first test. Lead with your shoulders. Let your gaze move deliberately. Project your energy outward, like you expect to be noticed. Because the moment you start waiting for attention, you've already lost it. The second habit, speaking with apology in your tone. You can say strong things. You can use powerful words. But if your tone rises at the end of every sentence, if you sound like you're asking for permission to speak, it doesn't matter what you're saying. You'll lose the room before you finish your point. Powerful people don't tune into politeness. They tune into conviction. That soft, that hesitant, sorry, that nervous laugh before a sentence, all of it tells them, I don't fully believe what I'm saying. To Machiavelli, speech was never just communication, it was a weapon. Measured, controlled, final. Train your tone to be calm, flat, slow, and certain. Speak less, but with more weight. And most importantly, let silence do half the talking. You don't have to fill every gap with words to prove you belong. When your tone stops asking for approval, people start listening for your next move. The third habit, laughing too easily. Laughter is a social signal. It says, I agree, I'm safe, I want to belong. But as Machiavelli would warn, the one who laughs first gives away their power, especially when the joke isn't funny, or worse, when it's at their expense. Powerful people often test you this way. They'll say something risky, sarcastic, or borderline disrespectful and then wait. They're not testing if you'll be offended. They're testing if you'll laugh to stay in their good graces. And the second you do, they've marked you. You'll never be seen as their equal again. Don't laugh to belong. If someone tries to mock you, don't smirk. Go silent. Hold tension in the air. Let them feel the stillness. Because when people can't read you, they can't control you, and that is real power. The fourth habit, over-explaining simple things. You're asked a question. You answer. Then you keep going, adding backstory, disclaimers, examples. Not because it's needed, but because you're trying to justify your right to speak. That's insecurity disguised as helpfulness, and powerful people can smell it immediately. They don't have time for people who narrate their thoughts like a podcast no one subscribed to. You think, if I explain it clearly enough, they'll understand me. But they think, if he needs this many words, he's not worth listening to. As Machiavelli said, the more you explain, the more control you hand over. So answer, then stop. Let silence carry the rest. Speak like your time is expensive. If they want more, let them ask for it. Because when you speak less, your words gain gravity. When you speak too much, your value dissolves in the noise. These might seem like small quirks, but they're not. They're invisible disqualifiers, tiny signals that tell powerful people, this one's not ready. This one doesn't believe in himself. This one can be ignored. And here's the truth. You don't get second chances with power. By the time you've realized what you did wrong, the room has already moved on. Machiavelli understood that every environment, a boardroom, a conversation, a dinner table, is a battlefield. Not fought with swords, but with tone, posture, and silence. And if you don't know how to weaponize them, you'll be dismissed before your words even register. But we're not done. There are more habits, each one sharper than the last. Each one quietly responsible for why you've been overlooked, underestimated, or forgotten in rooms that could have changed your life. You weren't rejected. You were invisible, and your habits made it so. Because invisibility isn't something you're born with, it's something you train yourself into. Every time you suppress an opinion, every time you nod when you should have walked away, every time you soften what you mean, you carve yourself into someone forgettable. The powerful don't miss you because they never even saw you. And that's what we'll break next. The powerful aren't blind, they filter. They scan every room and eliminate, almost unconsciously, anyone who gives off the scent of compliance, apology, or unclaimed identity. They don't do this because they're cruel. They do it because their time is limited, and power only moves toward other power. And that brings us to the fifth habit, waiting to be included. You sit at the table but don't speak unless spoken to. You hover on the edge of conversations, hoping someone will invite you in. You wait for permission socially, professionally, emotionally. But waiting to be included is the death of presence. It tells the world, I don't believe I belong here. Can someone else decide for me? Machiavelli would have laughed at that. Powerful people never wait for openings, they create them. They insert themselves, not arrogantly, but decisively. They don't ask, is it my turn? They take the turn. Add value fast, then go silent. Let your words echo while everyone else scrambles to catch up. Because in rooms that matter, the ones who hesitate are forgotten, and the ones who speak once with weight are remembered. The sixth habit, apologizing for your standards. You have preferences, boundaries, non-negotiables, but the moment someone questions them, you soften, you explain, you backtrack. You say things like, oh, it's not a big deal, or I didn't mean to sound harsh. And in that moment, all the gravity of your standards evaporates. Machiavelli understood something that most people never learn. Standards are not about morality. They're about calibration of power. When you apologize for your standards, you make them look arbitrary. When you stand by them silently, you make them sacred. Say no without flinching. Decline without a backstory. Walk away without showing pain. Because when your standards are delivered without explanation, they become law. And law commands respect, not permission. The seventh habit, overusing praise. You think that complimenting people makes you likable. You say things like, nice work, or that's amazing, every few minutes just to keep things smooth. You're trying to be warm, agreeable, easy to like. But here's the truth. Too much praise devalues the currency. When you flood people with validation, it starts to sound like neediness. Machiavelli would say, praise too freely given signals the desire to belong, not the strength to lead. Because when you're always praising, powerful people see you as someone who's trying to buy acceptance. So what's the alternative? Praise with precision. Praise rarely. And when you do, let it cost you something. Make it specific, intentional, and slightly delayed. Because the one who can withhold praise until it matters, their words hit harder than applause. Their compliments become signals, not noise. And the powerful respond to signals. The 8th habit, mirroring too much. You match their tone, their slang, their laugh, their rhythm. You think you're building connection, but in reality, you're erasing yourself. Because the more you reflect someone else, the more your own edges disappear. And once your identity blurs, you stop being interesting. To the powerful, unconscious mirroring screams desperation. It says, I'll be whatever you need me to be. Just don't exclude me. And once they sense that, they stop respecting you. Keep your natural tone, even if it clashes. Don't match volume, posture, or energy, just to smooth things over. Let there be tension. Let silence hang. Because only people with nothing to prove can stay solid in the presence of difference. And that solidity, that's what creates curiosity. Curiosity becomes respect, and respect is the root of influence. The 9th habit, showing gratitude too early. Yes, gratitude is powerful, but timing is everything. If you walk into a room and start with, "Thank you for your time," or "Thanks for letting me be here," before you've established presence, you instantly frame yourself as the subordinate. It sounds polite, but Machiavelli would call it what it is, a silent confession. I believe this interaction benefits me more than it benefits you. That single imbalance shrinks your power. Delay your gratitude. Establish parity first. Speak with equality before you offer deference. Because when you lead with thanks, you reinforce the lie that you're lucky to be there. But when you walk in with presence first, gratitude becomes grace, not groveling. And power always respects grace more than apology. These 9 habits don't scream weakness. They whisper it. And those whispers are louder to the powerful than any shout. They don't need to analyze you. They feel you. They sense the insecurity in your posture, the apology in your tone, the uncertainty in your laughter. And when those signals tell them, this one bends, this one shrinks, this one mirrors, you vanish from their field of attention. They don't dislike you, they simply stop seeing you. And that's worse, because when power forgets you, so does opportunity, so does influence, so does the world. But when you kill these habits, something shifts. The air around you thickens. People pause before speaking to you. They correct their tone without being told. Not because you demanded respect, but because you stopped radiating need. What's left is presence. And presence is what the powerful cannot afford to overlook. You don't become visible by trying to be seen. You become visible by becoming undeniable. Most people beg for attention. They perform. They soften. They seek approval with every word. They think visibility is given. Machiavelli knew better. Visibility is claimed, and the moment you stop signaling weakness, the world begins to notice not because you got louder, but because your silence got heavier. Now we reach the final layers. The habits that sit deeper than posture or tone. These aren't surface-level mistakes. They're identity leaks. Subtle ways you train others to see you as small. Let's start with the 10th habit. Constantly seeking emotional safety in conversation. You walk into a room and your eyes instantly scan for friendly faces. You read everyone's tone before you speak. You measure every reaction mid-sentence, adjusting, softening, apologizing, editing yourself in real time. Why? Because you want things to stay smooth. You're addicted to emotional safety. But Machiavelli would say this addiction is a quiet form of servitude. He who fears conflict will always serve the one who doesn't. Real power doesn't chase comfort. It creates tension without blinking. Powerful people say things that unsettle, ask questions that challenge, and let silence burn without rushing to fill it. You think peace earns you approval, but all it does is make you the emotional janitor, cleaning up everyone else's discomfort while burying your own presence. Let people feel uneasy around you. Let your words land heavy. Let silence stretch until they have to meet your gaze, because the one who doesn't fear emotional chaos becomes the anchor in any room. That's influence, not charm, not approval, presence. The 11th habit, avoiding physical space. You sit small, legs crossed, shoulders tucked in. You minimize hand gestures, take up the corner seat, lean away from attention. You think it looks polite, but it reads like submission. Your body is saying, "I'm not a threat. Don't mind me." And the powerful hear that message clearly. Machiavelli believed every room is an arena, and before you even speak, your body gives your first speech. If your posture doesn't claim territory, your words never will. Unfold your arms. Plant your feet. Keep your chin level and your shoulders squared. Don't shrink when eyes turn toward you, let them stay, because your body trains your mind. And when your posture commands space, your thoughts start moving with authority. You stop just existing in rooms, you begin anchoring them. The 12th habit, over-identifying with good intentions. This one's brutal. You believe that because your heart is pure, people should automatically see that. You tell yourself, "I didn't mean to sound weak. I meant well." But power doesn't care what you meant. It only responds to what you signal. You might think your kindness speaks for itself. It doesn't. Over-identifying with your good intentions blinds you to how others experience you. You assume people see your depth, your honesty, your potential. Machiavelli would laugh at that naivety. He'd remind you, goodness without perception is useless. Intentions are invisible. Signals are everything. Powerful people don't decode your soul. They respond to your behavior. If you appear unsure, apologetic, or needy, they don't go digging for the reason. They simply categorize you. Not ready. Stop thinking your heart will be rewarded. It won't. What gets rewarded is presence, conviction, and control over how you come across. Adjust your behavior, not your inner story, because the world doesn't move toward the kindest people. It moves toward the clearest signals. The 13th and most dangerous habit, treating influence like something to be earned. You believe that one day, if you prove yourself, someone will tap you on the shoulder and say, "It's your time." You think if you work hard enough, stay loyal enough, or get liked enough, you'll finally be seen. But Machiavelli would tell you this: influence is never earned. It's assumed. And if it's assumed with enough conviction, it becomes real. The ones who rise the fastest carry one belief: I am already someone. You just haven't realized it yet. They don't wait for validation. They walk in as if the spotlight was already theirs, not out of arrogance, but certainty. They don't demand attention. They adjust the room by simply being in it. Stop waiting for your work to speak for itself. It won't. Stop waiting for permission to act like you matter. Start acting as though the world is catching up to your inevitability. When you move like someone who assumes power quietly, deliberately, unapologetically, the world starts reacting to you before you even speak. That's when you become visible, not because you shouted your worth, but because ignoring you would feel like a mistake. Now step back and see the full picture. 13 habits, each one a tiny self-erasure. each one quietly training people to forget you. You weren't born invisible. You practiced invisibility. You learned to silence yourself for peace, to explain yourself for approval, to smile for belonging, to shrink for safety. And every time you did, you sent a message. Don't notice me. But now you've seen what those habits cost you. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you know how you disappear, you can never again disappear by accident. You start walking differently. You start speaking differently. The world starts adjusting differently. Because presence, true presence, isn't about confidence. It's about weight. When you enter a room without apology, without the need to prove, without the instinct to please, the atmosphere changes. You don't have to dominate. You just exist with gravity. And gravity can't be ignored. Here's where we go deeper. Because presence isn't built in public, it's built in private. It's in how you carry yourself when no one's watching. And these final lessons cut to the core of how the powerful perceive you. Let's begin with what Machiavelli would call the illusion of emotional control. Most people believe control means never showing anger. But the truth, real control means never reacting when someone wants you to. When someone provokes you, a sarcastic comment, a passive-aggressive jab, they're not trying to offend you. They're testing how easy it is to move you. Because if they can move your emotions, they can move your decisions. The weak take the bait. The powerful don't. They pause. They breathe. They let silence do the work. Machiavelli would call that psychological dominance through stillness. When you don't react, you force others to reveal themselves. They start talking more. They expose their motives. They become uncomfortable trying to fill your silence. And that's when control quietly shifts to you. So next time someone tests you, don't fight it. Observe. Let them burn their own energy trying to decode yours. Because when you're unprovoked, you're untouchable. Now let's talk about strategic distance. This is one of the most misunderstood forms of power. You've been told to show up, to be available, to stay visible. But Machiavelli would disagree. Too much presence breeds contempt. Too much availability breeds invisibility. When you're always there, people stop noticing. When you disappear strategically, they start remembering. It's not absence, it's calculated scarcity. You don't vanish out of spite. You retreat with precision. Think of it this way. Gold isn't valuable because it shines. It's valuable because it's rare. Your presence works the same way. If you're always easy to reach, your attention loses value. If you appear only when it matters, your presence carries weight. So stop explaining your every move. Stop answering every message instantly. Stop filling every silence with reassurance. Learn to vanish with purpose. Let people feel your absence, because when they feel it, they remember what your presence costs. Another layer of power, Machiavelli understood the art of silence. Silence is not weakness. It's a filter. When you stop explaining, you find out who actually respects you. The ones who can't stand your silence. They're the ones who only valued your compliance. He said, "He who justifies his every step gives others the right to question it." Every time you explain why you didn't reply, why you pulled back, why you need space, you teach people that your peace requires permission. But it doesn't. Your silence is not arrogance. It's sovereignty. It's your way of saying, I don't owe access to everyone. The next time someone asks, "Why are you so quiet?" smile. Because if your stillness bothers them, it's because they were feeding on your energy. Then comes the loneliness of transformation. When you start withdrawing your old habits, the over-explaining, the people-pleasing, the endless availability, something happens. The world goes quiet. At first, it feels like loss. Then it feels like clarity. You start realizing who was really there for you and who was just there for what you provided. And that silence, that isolation, It's not punishment. It's purification. You're shedding the version of yourself that begged to be liked. You're burying the man who explained himself into exhaustion. And what's rising in his place is someone dangerous, calm, grounded, unreadable. That loneliness you feel isn't emptiness. It's space. And that space is where your power begins to breathe. Machiavelli would call this stage the quiet rise. It's the part where you no longer perform power, you become it. You don't rush to be understood. You don't chase approval. You don't need to be seen. Because once you stop signaling weakness, the powerful stop overlooking you. They start recalibrating around you. Your absence becomes felt. Your silence becomes respected. Your stillness becomes a question people can't stop asking. Who is this person? And why does he move like that? That's when you know you've crossed the threshold. You've gone from being forgettable to being felt. Now that you've seen all the 13 habits, take a breath. Because this is where the transformation begins. You've probably realized something uncomfortable. You weren't born invisible. You trained yourself to disappear. Every time you stayed quiet to avoid conflict. Every time you smiled through disrespect, just to keep the peace. Every time you apologized for taking up space or speaking your truth, you were slowly teaching the world that your presence didn't matter. But that old version of you dies today. Because visibility, true visibility, doesn't come from being loud. It comes from being undeniable. And that starts by removing everything that made you small. You subtract apology. You subtract explanation. You subtract the desperate need to be understood. And what remains is gravity. Machiavelli would say, power isn't something you request. It's something you radiate. The goal isn't to appear confident. It's to move as if confidence were already built into your bones. So let's imagine it. You walk into a room not fast, not hesitant. Your pace is calm, your gaze deliberate. You're not looking for anyone's eyes to meet yours. You're not seeking permission to belong. You already belong. Your shoulders are open, your chin level, your energy expands outward, like you're quietly claiming the space around you. When you speak once. Your tone is low, steady, final. You don't trail off. You don't rise at the end like you're asking for approval. You end your sentence in silence. And that silence, it does the heavy lifting. It's not awkward. It's magnetic. People lean in. They want to fill the gap, but they can't because you own the rhythm now. If someone tries to test you with sarcasm, mockery, or hidden challenge, you don't react. You don't laugh nervously. You don't match their tone. You don't explain. You just meet their gaze, calm, cold, still. And in that silence, you say everything. You can't read me. You can't move me. You don't know what I'll do next. And that uncertainty, that's power. Because when people can't predict you, they can't control you. They stop testing you. They start respecting you. See, the powerful don't dominate by speaking more. They dominate by needing less. They don't react to disrespect. They let it hang in the air until the offender feels their own echo. They don't explain themselves. They let misunderstanding rot in silence. They don't rush to defend their value, because they understand that real worth never begs to be recognized. That's presence. Not the performance of strength, but the absence of weakness. But here's what no one tells you. Once you start living this way, you'll lose people. The ones who depended on your softness will call you arrogant. The ones who fed on your approval will call you distant. The ones who took advantage of your patience will call you cold. Let them, because you've stopped being accessible to those who only valued your compliance. You've stopped apologizing for protecting your peace. And you've stopped performing for people who were never watching with respect. This isn't arrogance. It's evolution. And evolution always offends those who refuse to grow with you. Machiavelli understood something timeless. Respect doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being felt. When you walk into a room, people should feel you before you say a word, not fear awareness, an instinctive recognition that you carry yourself differently, that you don't chase attention, that you can't be provoked, that your silence is not emptiness, it's control. And once you reach that level, everything changes. People lower their voices when they speak to you. They adjust their tone. They second-guess sarcasm. They don't interrupt you mid-sentence because they know your words are measured. You no longer have to demand respect. You've become the person who doesn't need to. That's the ultimate Machiavellian power, silent dominance. But don't confuse this with isolation. True presence isn't about withdrawing from life. It's about entering it differently. You still engage. You still connect. But you do it with precision, not permission. You no longer speak to be liked. You speak to be understood. You no longer seek warmth. You radiate gravity. You no longer mirror others. You anchor them. You move slower. You listen longer. You measure every word like it costs something because it does. And that scarcity, that deliberate restraint is what creates value. The man who's everywhere becomes background noise. The man who's selective becomes unforgettable. Now imagine the moment when someone tries to challenge you, maybe a boss, a rival, a friend who's grown too comfortable testing your patience. They throw a jab, expecting your old reaction, the smile, the justification, the nervous laughter. But this time, you do nothing. You hold their gaze. You let the silence stretch. You give them space to hear their own disrespect. And then you move on calm, composed, unbothered. They'll laugh it off at first. But hours later, they'll replay that moment in their head, wondering why they suddenly feel small. That's what mastery looks like. Not revenge, not confrontation, just presence so heavy it redefines the interaction without a word. And that's how you rise, not by chasing recognition, but by removing everything that once made you ignorable. Not by proving yourself to others, but by becoming someone who no longer needs to. You don't perform power anymore. You are power, still, silent, certain. When you enter a room now, people will feel it. The air will shift. The tone will change. And the powerful, the real ones, will take notice. Because you're no longer just in the room. You've become the center of it. Not by force, not by noise, but by presence so undeniable that ignoring you would feel like a mistake. That's not arrogance. That's mastery. And that's how kings are made.